Siragusa, and today we are broadcasting our second show. It's Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. I am joined by Carlos Ponce, my co-host, and also
Thank you.
Mariel Navarro, who's joining us today. And let's not forget our guest, Matt Levine from CacheFly. Matt, welcome to Dojo Live.
How's everybody doing?
Very good, thanks. So we're going to have an interesting conversation today about noisy neighbors, quote unquote. So it's not what you think, folks. It's got to do with technology. But before we go into that, let's get to know Matt a little bit before we introduce the topic. Tell us a little bit about you, Matt. Let's get to know you a little bit.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I am the founder and CTO at CacheFly, and I've been in the CDN space for 20 years or so now. It pains me to say that out loud, but I can't change the facts. And I would say I'm probably best known for pioneering using Anycast for delivering content on the internet. And when I'm not doing that and being a strong evangelist for Anycast, I am a diehard Toronto Raptors fan. So you can usually find me watching basketball, and I feel like I'm an outlier in the tech community these days, but I've become strangely and truly addicted to golf. So that has been my one respite from quarantine, is that I'm in Toronto, Canada, and the golf courses have been open since June. So I am able to get outside and see the mysterious glowing orb out there.
Nice. That's a big commitment, golfing, but
Yeah.
so much fun. So tell us a little bit about CacheFly. What's the company all about? What gave birth to this idea? What are you guys solving?
Sure. So I actually got pitched the idea in 2002 by one of our competitors. I think I would have been employee number 3 or 4 they were offering me, and we didn't see eye to eye on the technology, but they had me convinced that there was an opportunity in the market. So I went off and started, at the time we were called Cache Networks, and then we launched CacheFly as our retail brand in, I guess, 2005. So it was about 3 years of R&D, really playing with Anycast, which is what we do now, as I mentioned. And we're a CDN, so what that means is we keep copies of our customers' content in data centers all over the world. So I think we have 54 cities on the network map, and effectively we're cheating the speed of light. So if you think of how fast something can download to your computer, our typical customer looks like somebody distributing entertainment content or software, gaming, typically large files. But we also have people in e-commerce and sort of just general web delivery news sites that are smaller objects. And we enable them to deliver that content to the users, in the case of video without buffering, in the case of software downloads quickly. In the case of smaller web pages, they're super focused on time to paint or load time for their websites. So we help with all of that. And the way we do it is caching our customers' content in each of those locations all over the world. Our secret sauce, which is mostly Anycast based, is in getting people to our data center that's physically closest to them. And so by keeping the content there and then sending users to the closest physical location, we're able to reduce the amount of time in transfer that the data that customer is requesting is, and that's what allows it to download more reliably and faster. So it's distributed cloud hosting at a high level.
Cool. So I'm curious to go right into the topic today and dig in a little deeper. Carlos, please, what's the conversation we're going to have today about?
Absolutely, Tulio, Marielle, and Matt. Thank you for being with us, Matt, by the way. Today, we're going to be speaking about avoiding, quote unquote, noisy neighbors by delivering from the edge. Kind of intriguing type of title, if you ask me, and I'm looking forward to this. So, in other words, we're going to be speaking about when, or we're going to be, Matt is going to be answering the question, when is keeping your content in cache the best solution? So, Matt, first question that I have for you is this: why did you choose this particular topic? Why did you think it was relevant for today's conversation?
That's a very good question. So CDNs have been around for uh, 22, 23 years ago would have been the first CDN launch. And for the most part, the architecture that we saw in 1997, 1998 is the same overall architecture that CDNs still are deploying today. And the question that I guess makes this an interesting topic isn't so much where we are today, but where are we going? So we look forward 2 to 5 years ahead, and what are the challenges that are coming by virtue of technology changes? So for us, that means what's 5G going to change? What is more global broadband users, especially in the developing world, coming online in the next 5 years mean? And what happens as the size of content continues to almost grow exponentially? So the real catchphrase that we use when we talk about this internally is what needs to change if we're going to be delivering 8K content in a 5G world? And the answer is a lot. So we're really at the max of what the old architecture was. So the old architecture for CDNs is kind of intimately tied with noisy neighbor. So it's shared architecture. So
all right, I got a dumb question. What does noisy neighbor mean in context of this?
Sure.
For those who don't know.
So noisy neighbor loosely means on any shared infrastructure, you have neighbors, and without really good, trying to think of a good analogy, but I don't have one. Without really good resource isolation, the performance of your neighbors can dictate your performance.
So let's say I live in a cul-de-sac with 5 houses and we all share the entry point, and 4 of the cars are in the entry point. I can't get into my own home.
Correct. And so the resources are shared amongst the people on your street. Now what happens when somebody has a party on your cul-de-sac and they've got actually 40 people coming over? All of a sudden, your experience of trying to get your car in and out of your house is a little different than a normal day.
Yeah.
And so that can mean on a daily sort of what happens at peak. So a lot of noisy neighbor problems don't exist at 1 p.m. There's enough resources to go around. All of a sudden,
that's why we do this show at 1 p.m., by the way.
Exactly. But at 6 o'clock when everybody turns on Netflix, it's a different animal. So it might make sense to step back to cloud architecture because it's a little easier to think of, and then I'll move forward to CDN. So in cloud architecture, today this is no longer a problem. Going back 8-9 years ago, huge problem. So what used to happen was and at the time it was probably just Amazon, but you'd go to your cloud provider and you'd buy a VM that had 8 CPU cores. And then it even told you, this is how insulting it used to be. It used to tell you, if you used to look at your CPU stats, your CPU could be user, system, idle, stolen, or soft IRQ. Stolen meant your neighbor's using it. And it used to tell you, it used to say, the hypervisors actually can't give you what you're paying us for because somebody else is using it. Which doesn't seem like a great way to build a reliable infrastructure on. And so over time, that has been fully optimized out of traditional, certainly in the hyperscalers. That's not something you would ever see today in Amazon or Microsoft or Google because they have really good resource isolation. So they say, you're paying for 8 cores, we're dedicating 8 cores to you, nobody else can steal them. So more than anything else, the better way to think of it is it's a natural effect of oversubscription. So on your cul-de-sac, you might have a cable modem, and you might have, let's say, 500 megabits of capacity to your cul-de-sac. However, your provider might be giving everybody 300 meg maximum download service. You've got a problem as soon as one person's using 300 and somebody else is trying to use 200. Now you're out for everybody else.
Yeah.
If you said, okay, everybody has 300 meg service, there's 10 houses, and we're going to provision 3 gigabits, you're never going to have a noisy neighbor problem. So it only happens with oversubscription. So what Amazon used to do is they used to have a server that had 24 cores, and they'd sell 36 because they knew that not everybody was going to be using 100% all the time.
Matt, I have a question for you. For those who are watching that might not know, well, you speak about managing and serving content. What kind of content are you talking about? Just to be more specific and clear about this to agnostic audiences right now.
Sure. So just like most of the internet, the majority of the delivery that we're doing is video. So when we say content, we mean either live or from a VOD library, serving, let's say, video to your TV through a VOD service. Or content might be, if everybody has kids who are frequently, especially during quarantine, on their consoles, if you need to download the latest update to your Xbox or your PlayStation, that would be content that we would serve. Mm-hmm. Or if we're talking about a website, if it's an e-commerce website, it might be all the images in their product catalog. So when you load a product page and there's one image loaded primarily and then 6 thumbnails down the side. So typically media content, software, audio, video, downloads.
So it's mostly, it's very intensive, very data intensive content, what you're talking about. Okay, right. I get it. Thank you.
Content where the quality of it really, the ability to deliver it dictates your experience.
But who's your client? Is it me as a consumer, or is it the ISP who actually buys the service so that they can manage it better?
Good question. Neither. So our customers are the content owners, or
interesting.
More recently, platforms. So going back,
so a Netflix, for example,
exactly.
Or a Hulu, for example. Okay.
Exactly. Or even in podcasting, years ago, we were one of the early podcast advertisers. I think at 1.7 of the top 10 most popular podcasts in the iTunes store at the time we used to deliver. And so back then we would deal with individual podcasters. In the world today, there's so much content. All this is exploding. Today, we almost never deal with individual shows, but we deal with services that offer hosting and metrics and statistics for hosts.
So CDN is not effective for our websites. Let's say that I have a website that handles minimal traffic. That wouldn't be useful for my website?
That's actually a very good question, and I can answer it by bringing it back to the noisy neighbor question. So the first thing you would notice if you try to use a CDN for a website without much traffic is it wouldn't be very effective because of noisy neighbor. So the way CDN works, we have caches, and those are shared resources. Not only are they shared, but they're oversubscribed. So that's the perfect recipe for a noisy neighbor problem. So let's say we have a data center. We'll just take London, England as an example. We have a certain amount of cache in London, England. If your content is not requested in London, England for a while, falls out of cache. Why? Because your neighbors on that cache are busier than you. And they're actually taking resources away from you by virtue of how much they are injecting into the cache. So the cache is a fixed size. We need to erase something to make room for the new object. The thing that gets erased is what was least recently accessed. So CDNs have always been particularly ineffective for long tail content libraries and or ones that don't have a lot of traffic. And so the noisy neighbor, and CDN is really the only place left where this happens just like that. So the analogy today would be that, if today, if you started up a VM on, say, Azure, and you bought 8 cores, and you logged in tomorrow, and there was only 6 on your VM, and you said, what happened to the other 2? And they said, oh, we gave it to your competitor. It would not be an awesome way to run a business. But that might be what happened to your CDN objects. Like, we had them in cache for yesterday in London, and then your competitor was a little busier than you, and they also happened to be a customer, so we got rid of your content to make room for theirs. And now if somebody comes to your site again, we're going to have to go get it from your origin, which might be not near London. So it's going to be a particularly slow experience. And so as we look forward into this future world of 5G 8K content, we can't just keep throwing storage at it. All the CDNs, including us, would go bankrupt if we just said, oh, we're just going to keep adding petabytes in every pop forever, so that if somebody requests something, it's fair to Marielle that her competitor didn't replace it. The size and depth, if you will, of content libraries are going to outpace what we're able to, keep growing with CapEx. Especially when you say today we have a footprint of 50, let's say 50 data centers. Well, now it's a 5G world. You need to be closer to 5G, so now we need 500 data centers. So now we need to spend 10x the CapEx just to have this exact same thing that we have today. That doesn't scale. So
what's the solution then?
Well, the answer is, it's more of a question that I always ask people is, if you're not paying me for storage, how much do you think I'm reserving for you?
Nothing.
There you go. So that's what you're entitled to, and that's what you get. And so one of the biggest complaints we hear from people, especially people who are, I don't want to say new, but are running a site that hasn't hit critical mass, or in any way are not at the same scale of anybody they're competing with, they'll find that their cache hit ratio, which basically means what percentage of the requests that we get at the edge we can serve from the edge versus how much we have to go fetch and pull into cache, are very low, 40%, 30%, which makes you wonder how effective it can be if only 30% of your objects were serving from cache. But more importantly, as an industry, we're used to being very opaque and hiding things from people as CDNs, and we're just as guilty as anybody else. So what you really probably care about is the cache byte ratio. And the best way I'd think of this, and I'll stick with the Hulu reference, is let's say you open up your VOD service on your TV, and you scan through the catalog, and you say, I'm not going to watch that show, I'm not going to watch that show, I'm not going to watch that show. I like that one, I'm going to press play. Let's say 60% of that was served from cache. And along the way, you had 7 requests for thumbnails for what the preview of the movie looked like, and 1 request for the movie itself. If I said 60% was served from cache, what does that mean? Because it matters if it was the 4K video that was in cache versus a thumbnail. And you don't even know. I'm just saying, 60% of them, but I won't tell you which ones. Whereas if I said the cache byte ratio, this is the number of actual bytes that we weren't able to serve and we had to go fetch from somewhere far away. All of a sudden, it makes a big difference if it was the 4K video in cache versus the thumbnail. And it certainly makes an experience to you as an end user. Our video clients say you cannot ever rebuffer. Once it starts playing, it needs to keep playing. So if I have to choose, I'd much rather have the 4K video in cache. So as it relates to the original question, but if you're my customer and you're not paying me for storage, how much am I setting aside for you? So our solution is that we think people should be able to buy a set amount of storage, whatever that is, that's right for their business and their content footprint, and nobody else should be able to kick things out of it. So that resource isolation that we have now in most cloud services, we believe that's what CDN is going to need moving forward, simply because the amount of content, the penalty for it being a cache miss, and sort of the number of new customers coming to CDN every week, month, year. It's a recipe for inconsistent performance. And what we find is there's really not too many places where one CDN really is so much better from a performance standpoint than another. If all you're measuring is what is your peak, what is the best everybody can do. But what we're seeing is customers that are really looking for consistency of experience. So does it work the same at 7 p.m. that it did at 7 a.m.? And that is where having resource isolation, and so our service we have is called SOS, which is the storage optimization solution. And that is a way to hand control, which is also what it's about, back to our customers and say, okay, how much dedicated space do you want? It's up to you. It's not variable. It's not going to change. Another competing video service won't take your space away tomorrow. For some customers, it might be their whole content library. We have some e-commerce customers where they firmly believe if the site takes more than a second to load, they lose real money. And they have a lot of images, but their overall content library is tiny. 5 gigabytes might be the whole site with 200,000 product SKUs. We can keep now that whole thing in cache, whereas one of those images might only be requested once every 2 months. So in a traditional CDN environment, most things like that would last in cache for an hour, maybe 2. We're able to keep it forever because for their business case, they said, I have 5 gigabytes of total content. I would like 5 gigabytes of CDN cache. Other people might say, the 80-20 rule applies. I have a really long tail content library that's 2 petabytes. But if you give me 200 terabytes of CDN cache, 87% of my video loads will come from cache. So I don't need to make it as big as my whole content library, but there's a certain size that makes it deliver a really good experience for my users, my content. But the point of all of it is to give that control over to our customers, which they would do if they were building their own CDN or if they were describing the perfect service for them. Nobody would ever say, the way I'd like it to work is I want my content to be there one day, and then depending on what a whole bunch of other people do, it's okay if it goes away. Nobody would sit down and draw that on paper.
No, definitely not.
I got a question, Matt, for you, and I got to ask this because we're coming up on time shortly, and I know you're having a blast talking about very detailed, elaborate aspects of the tech side because you are the company's CTO,
Sure.
and I totally understand that. But as part of, I'd like to ask you a question that's related to CacheFly. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. CacheFly itself as a company, because we might have viewers out there who could be engineers who are kind of wondering what's out there on the job scenario, or want to be kept abreast of what's going on in the tech companies. How would you say that CacheFly is culture is like? In other words, why would you say that CacheFly is a great company to work for in a way that would probably elicit someone's attention in a way that he would be compelled to reach out and say, hey, I want to work for you guys. What makes it a great company? So can you talk to us just on the culture side, or company culture side? And we'd love to hear about that too.
Sure. Well, first things first, you don't have to hear as many monologues from me on a daily basis as this if you work there, so not to worry.
Okay.
In terms of our culture, I think what makes it a special place is the people. And we think we've done a very good job in using kind of our core values, core principles to attract the right mix of people.
Mm-hmm.
So, that what really stands out to me is that a word we use a lot for culture is clueful. So, as you said,
how's that? Clueful?
Clueful. So, you said I'm a geek, which I'll say I'm guilty as charged. And The nicest thing a geek can say about another geek, and Marielle will appreciate this, is that they have clue.
Yeah.
Right? And so all that means to us is it really doesn't matter what area it is, but it's, you know, that when somebody walks into a room, they know how to do something. And that is one of our core values is just the idea that you want to work with a bunch of people that are just like everybody on this call, right? You're switched on, batteries are included, you know how to do what you do. And so that's part of it. I think the other thing that's interesting right now is that we've always been a distributed team, and so work from home isn't new for us. So it's been interesting to talk to our customers and some of our vendors and other people that we interact with as they have transitioned from being in an office environment to moving to this sort of new distributed world. But the other sort of core values that make our team great, I think, is we have fun. So our other belief is life is way too short to wake up every day and do something that you don't enjoy and do it with people you don't like doing it with. And so clueful, have fun. You know, the other two aren't quite as exciting. Take initiative. But at the end of the day, it's about the people. It's about working on interesting problems. We have a pretty strong filter internally. We have always grown out of cash flow. We've never raised any outside money. So we're pretty picky about who our customers are. And we use that clueful filter on sales opportunities as well. So we only want to work both internally and externally with people that have all those qualities that we really value. And I think that's what makes it special, because it means we don't have any customers where when you see the name on caller ID, you go, oh, God, I don't want to pick this up. We enjoy interacting with our customers. We enjoy interacting with each other. And we get to play with cool technology and have fun. So
awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Matt. Back to you, Tulio, for wrap up.
Matt, yes, it's been a pleasure to have you so far here on the show. You know, if you're a content provider out there, this is obviously something you've got to plan out and think about and thoroughly vet having the right technology in place so you can serve your customers best. And the reality is that there are noisy neighbors out there. So how do you get around it? Sounds as though CacheFly is a good solution to help avoid these issues and certainly make it provide a better service if you are obviously a content provider out there. So congratulations for doing that. Now you founded this business. Is this your first company, Matt?
This is not. Actually, I dropped out of high school to start my first startup, and we blew up pretty spectacularly in .com bubble style. So
all right, so you got your MBA in real life experience.
Absolutely.
Can you share with us?
That's great.
You know, as we wrap up, as we close, any words of wisdom you'd like to share for those who perhaps similarly, like maybe they didn't finish school, I have to have a degree to start a business or to get something going. Any advice you'd like to share? Any words of wisdom in your own experience building this from scratch that you'd like to leave as words of encouragement for anybody watching?
That's a good question. I'm pretty sheepish about doling out entrepreneurial advice, but I will say just get started. There's everybody has a good idea, and everybody has 50 excuses why they can't get started. It's way easier to harness momentum. And actually, I have one that ties into CacheFly culture as well. So when we think of engineering projects or pretty much anything, I think that applies to starting a business, and it's probably how we got where we are. Is make small bets and double down on what works. That's it. Like you have the option to learn every day. You don't need to take the big bet. You don't need to take a huge risk. Make a small bet. Make 4 of them. If one of them's working, do more of that. But you'll get there. You just got to do the work.
Good advice. And with that, we'll wrap it up for today. Carlos, we got one more show tomorrow, correct? For this week?
Yeah, that is correct. Tulio, tomorrow we're going to be speaking with, let's see, Ross Morel, the founder and CEO of FrogSlayer. And the topic is the future of digital innovation, or why we're going to be answering the question on why the mid-market is poised to win the next horizon of digital innovation. So that's what we have for tomorrow, right here on Dojo Live at 1 p.m. Pacific. And then, of course, folks, on Monday, we're going to be having a recap, a 10-minute recap of all the 4 shows of this week. So, yeah, 4 shows this week we had, and we're going to be recapping all of them on Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific. So please join us. And if there's anyone out there who's watching and would like to be part of the recap show, just reach out to us. We're all over the place. So just reach out to any of us on our social networks, or even
leave a comment. Leave a comment.
Leave a comment. Yeah, exactly. Whatever you're watching, just leave a comment. And if you want to be part of the show, of the recap show, let us know. We'll send you an invite. We'll get it done. And with that being said, thank you so much, Matt, for having been with us today. And that's all with me, Tulio and Mariel. Thank you guys as ever.
See you guys soon. Stay safe.
Thank you.
See ya.